Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on this glorious Saturday. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it's an awesome privilege to have you guys joining me here today, as it is every day as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all that sorts of good stuff. We got a few things we're going to talk about. Best film of the year of 2018, a little bit about Joaquin Phoenix. What could this whole stuff with the Joker mean? We're going to talk about Alden Ehrenreich and the Solo stuff and all that kind of wonderful stuff. But I just want to say, I hope you're having a great weekend, and I wanted to just start off a little bit of a somber note. I lived for a number of years in the province of Saskatchewan, up in Canada. Beautiful country up there. And one of the things they truly cherish and love up there is hockey and junior hockey. And I don't know if you guys saw the reports, but there was a really brutal team bus accident involving one of the Canada's junior teams there. And apparently there are like 14 people lost their lives. A bunch of people are in hospital. So I just wanted to send my thoughts and prayers out to everybody in the province of Saskatchewan and everybody affected by that tragedy. It's a horrible thing to hear, and all my best to you guys up there. And here's hoping for all great things for people who are hospitalized and are trying to pull through this right now. So thoughts and prayers to you guys. Okay, with that out of the way, today's show is mainly going to be governed by the things you guys wanted to talk about because you guys send me the topics in my email. How do you submit a question or a topic to be on the John Campea Show? It's real simple. Just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line. And as always, guys, keep those emails to 90 words or less. All right, let's get to it now with the first question of the day. And the first question today comes to us from Garry, who writes, Alden Ehrenreich's upcoming performance as Han Solo still has a few Star Wars fans concerned after the initial trailer fell. I was wondering who would really be to blame if the guy fails. I'm sure a lot of criticism would fall on him, but why not Lord and Miller for casting him in the first place? Or Kathleen Kennedy for not overseeing the casting and early filming? Or maybe even Ron Howard for not recasting when he took over the reins? All right, thanks a lot for the question, Garry. And the first thing I feel like we should mention here is this. When it comes to the Alden Ehrenreich casting, there was something I said, I can't remember however long ago they announced his casting. Feels like it had to have been at least a year. But I remember something I said when they first cast him, and I still completely believe it. No matter how good Alden Ehrenreich does in this role, Alden Ehrenreich could deliver a Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood type of performance in Solo. And we are just going to have to accept right now that there is going to be a chunk of fans that are going to hate him anyway. That's just the reality of it. That's just the reality. The reality is no matter how good he is in this role, and maybe he won't be good in it, maybe, but I'm saying even if he's great in the role and he delivers one of the greatest performances of all time, we're just going to have to accept that there's going to be a chunk of people that are going to hate him in it because he's not Harrison Ford. And that's it. There are just going to be some segment of people that are just not going to like him in it just because it's not Harrison Ford or just because it's him. I mean, that's just the truth of it. That's the reality of it. That's not to say that anybody that doesn't like him in the role, it's because of that. No. I'm sure there are going to be people who are going into Solo with an open mind. They're going to watch it, and maybe they just don't like his performance. Totally fair. Nothing wrong with that at all. And I'm sure there's going to be those people as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. And maybe I'll hate his performance. Maybe you'll hate his performance, whatever. But just the point is that we're going to have to accept and understanding is the underlying foundation of all this is no matter how good Alden Ehrenreich is this, he's going to catch heat. Because there are simply people who will not accept, and this is ridiculous, but there's just simply people who will not accept anybody else playing the role other than Harrison Ford. So no matter what, there is no pleasing those people. There's nothing you can do to placate or please those people. That's just the reality. So, and again, nothing wrong with people going in with an open mind, seeing it and thinking he doesn't do a good job. That's totally fair. I might be one of those people. Now, as far as, let's go right down to the end of it. Let's say he doesn't do a good job. Who's to blame? Him, Lord and Miller, Kathleen Kennedy, Ron Howard. Let's start with Ron Howard. There's really nothing Ron Howard can do at that point because Ron Howard, it's one thing to step in and do a whole hell of a lot of reshooting. It's another thing to replace the star of the movie. That's a horse of a totally different color. Because now you're literally talking about tearing everything down. Like, you're talking about throwing everything out the window and starting completely from scratch. And no matter how much you do to, try to redo reshoots and change some things, and there's a lot of work and all that, it's a different thing to just scrap it all and start from scratch. And that's essentially what they would have had to have done. So let's assuming that that Alden Ehrenreich gives a bad performance, which we shouldn't assume that. Quite frankly, I think Alden Ehrenreich is a really great actor, because I saw him in a bad movie, which is the one of the Coen brothers. What was it called? Hail Caesar. Bad movie. I saw him in a bad movie with some great actors, and he was the best part of that movie. Him and Ralph Fiennes were the best parts of that movie, and him and Ralph Fiennes got to act off each other, and that was by far the best scene. Twitter was so simple. Twitter was so simple. That was absolutely the best scene of the movie, but he was great in that entire movie. The dude can act. He's a good actor. So, but let's say he doesn't. Okay, we can't have Ron Howard as part of that conversation. Okay, well then let's start with Lord and Miller. Well, they were the directors at the time when he was cast. So, if Alden Ehrenreich ends up being a bad fit, then probably the lion's share needs to go to Lord and Miller. However, then you mentioned Kathleen Kennedy. She can't be relieved of all the responsibility either. Yes, primarily it's the directors, but Kathleen Kennedy, she's got to give the check mark to everything. And even if you give directors creative freedom, you still have to, you're putting your stamp of approval on what they do. And so Kathleen Kennedy can't get away from that either, if he ends up being a really bad fit for the role. And again, I don't think he's going to be a bad fit for the role. I like what I saw from him in the trailers. I think he's a great actor. I've enjoyed the work he's done outside of it. I think he's going to be great. But you never know. So I would say probably the lion's share would probably have to go to Lord and Miller. Because here's the thing. I believe that if he doesn't work in this movie, it will not be because he doesn't have good acting. We know for a fact, it's an indisputable fact. We've seen his body of work. He's a good actor. But he may not be the right fit. And if it turns out that he's not the right fit, well, then that's got to go to the directors. And then a little bit also as well has to go to Kathleen Kennedy. I don't really think there's anything Ron Howard could have done from the beginning. So again, I'm actually getting more and more faith in this movie. I'm actually thinking the movie's going to be pretty good. But if it's not, and part of it is this, then that's where I think the responsibility is going to lie. That's just my thoughts on that. I'm sure you guys have some thoughts on that as well. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Joshua Toussaint, who writes, if this Todd Philips Joker movie gets into production and it gets Joaquin Phoenix, is it really its own story, or do you think it is part of a rebooted DCEU? Phoenix has stated before that he didn't want a multi-film deal for Doctor Strange, but minds can change. Thanks, and keep up the glorious content. Yep. First of all, what Joshua is referring to is, you guys will remember back a couple years ago, when they were still putting the Doctor Strange movie together, there were reports going out. They were in negotiations with Joaquin Phoenix. This was going to be our Doctor Strange. And that would have been great. I love the fact of who we ended up with. I love the fact that we had Cumberbatch as our main guy. That's great. But he would have been great too. He would have been a wonderful Doctor Strange. But those negotiations fell through. And what was reported was that the reason the negotiations fell through is because ultimately Phoenix wasn't comfortable signing on for a 5-film deal. He didn't want to be committed for that long to playing, in a franchise. And I respect that. I respect that. And Marvel's well, we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we're having casting drama every time we use Doctor Strange, so we're going to move on to somebody else. Nobody was in the wrong there. Totally makes sense. It wasn't a good fit, wasn't a good match. Joaquin Phoenix went off to do something else, and they went and got Benedict, and everything worked out for everybody. So with that in mind, it became really curious when it started to surface that Joaquin Phoenix was in talks with Warner Brothers for playing in this standalone Joker movie that's going to sit outside of the DCEU. So the question is it really a standalone outside the DCEU, or could this be a relaunch of the DCEU, like a reboot of the DCEU, starting off with a Joker movie with this guy? Because even though he has said in the past he didn't want to sign a multi-film deal, hey, guess what? That was a few years ago. Our circumstances change from year to year. Maybe he wasn't in a place a few years ago that he felt it was a good move for him to sign on for a multi-film deal. But maybe today it's different. Maybe today's like, you know what? I did a couple more smaller films. I did one or two more smaller films. And yeah, now I feel like I'm in a place that I could sign a multi-film deal. Maybe that's the case. Who knows? It's possible. However, even though that's possible, if you're rebooting the DCEU, do you reboot with Joker? I mean, I don't think so. I don't necessarily think you have to reboot with Batman either. I don't think that's a necessity that you have to reboot the new universe with Batman. But I certainly don't think you reboot it with a Joker movie or a standalone Joker movie. I just don't think that's what you do. Not to mention that this Joker that he's going to be playing, if we remember all the reports correctly, this movie's going to take place in the 80s. Right? It's going to take place in the 80s. So that kind of precludes, so unless they want to age, Joaquin Phoenix up 30 or 40 years for new modern context movies later, it just doesn't make any sense. So while what you're suggesting is possible, I think it's possible. I think it's highly unlikely. I do think that what they're talking about would be a single shot standalone film. And I love the idea of some single shot standalone Elseworld kind of movies. I think you can tell some great stories that way without them being handcuffed to a larger cinematic universe. So I think that can work great. So bottom line is what you're suggesting is possible theoretically, but I think for all the reasons I listed, they're probably unlikely. But maybe you guys have some different thoughts. Jump down to the comment section below and let me know what you think. All right. Let's move on now to the final emailed in question of the day, and then we're going to go over and spend the rest of our Saturday just taking some live questions. And the final emailed in topic today comes to us from Marcus O'Brien, who writes, "Hey, John. Okay, I've now seen A Quiet Place, Ready Player One, and Black Panther. I'm totally torn on what I think is the best movie of 2018 so far. Frankly, I'm going back and forth a lot. I know you love all three movies, but now that you've had a couple of days to think about it, which one, or is there another, is the best of 2018 so far?" And yeah, all businesses look at movies in quarters. Quarter one of 2018, quarter two, Q3, Q4. We have just wrapped up Q1. Quarter one of 2018 is now behind us. So what is the best film of 2018 so far? I would want to suggest that there are not 3 contenders, but 4. I think there are 4 contenders for the number one film of the year so far. So let's look at them. First of all, as Ray has put this little graphic together, right there at the top, these are in no particular order, by the way, but right there at the top there, we see A Quiet Place. That's definitely in the running. Just saw it this past week. Magnificent film. Well done, John Krasinski. Of course, we've got Black Panther, which is the big hit of the year so far. Then we've got Ready Player One. Steven Spielberg returns to fantasy adventure and knocks it out of the park. The 4th film I would suggest that needs to be in this discussion. Some of you might be thinking Annihilation. I didn't think Annihilation was as good as it thought it was. That's just me. But not Annihilation, and this might surprise some of you, not those of you who've been watching me, but for those of you who might be new here, Paddington 2. Paddington 2 has to be in the discussion of the best film of the year so far. It's the only wide release film, by the way, to hold a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, by the way. It's still holding a 100%. I mean, that's crazy. Wide release films don't hold 100%. It's extremely rare. Paddington did. That doesn't mean it's the best. That doesn't automatically mean it's the best film of the year, but it means everyone liked it. Like everyone. Think of how many film critics there are and how wildly different their tastes are and how wildly different their preferences are. And all of them like it. They all like it. I love it. Paddington 2 is I shouldn't use this language talking about a Paddington movie. Paddington 2 is so fucking good, man. It's so good. I love that movie. So I'm going to say here, for the purposes of our discussion, even though you only brought up 3 movies, and there were good 3 movies to bring up, with Quiet Place, Black Panther, Ready Player One, I'm going to say this discussion needs to include Paddington 2. Okay, so now, all of us are going to rank these differently, but here's how I'm going to rank the best films of 2018 in quarter one, okay? And just with these 4 films alone, what a great quarter it's been. There have been a few disappointments, but just the fact that the first quarter this year have given us these 4 films makes it great to be a film fan. All right, here I'm going to go. Coming in 4th spot, Ready Player One. I'm going to put Ready Player One in the number 4 spot. It's wonderful. It's Steven Spielberg after decades away from it, coming back to fantasy adventure. BFG is fantasy, but it's not really adventure or action or anything like that. And I really like BFG, by the way. But with Ready Player One, we're seeing Steven Spielberg come back to just his wheelhouse, man. And he does everything. He's the best filmmaker of all time. But man, I loved Ready Player One. It's great. So for me, it comes in at the number 4 spot. Coming in the number 3 spot for me of 2018 so far, Paddington 2. I'm going to put Paddington 2 in my number 3 spot. By the way, all 4 of these are separated in my head by the finest micro of margins. But, this Paddington 2 is so special. It's fun, and it's funny, and it's endearing, and you feel your heartstrings are pulled on, and it's adorable, and it's a wonderful, innocent little adventure story. It just fires on all cylinders. It's just such an enjoyable, well put together piece of movie making, piece of storytelling. It's beautiful, and I love it. And you walk out of the movies after watching Paddington 2, and you're just smiling ear to ear. You're just grinning, and you feel like your heart has been edified. It's just a great movie experience. I love Paddington 2, so Paddington 2 comes in the number 3 spot for me. All right, so number 4 is Ready Player One. Number 3 is Paddington 2. And you know what? I'm not going to say the number 2 one yet. I'm just going to go right to number 1, all right? So 4, Ready Player One. 3, Paddington. Now I'm going to announce my number 1. Out of Black Panther and A Quiet Place, Black Panther. I'm going to go Black Panther on it. Again, by the tiniest micro of margins, I'm going to go Black Panther right now as my number 1 film of 2018 so far. There's just so much in it. And, just as a part of the MCU, it's perfect. As its own standalone hero origin film, it's perfect. As a great action adventure film, it's great. It's filled with wonderful characters like Okoye and M'Baku, who I cannot wait to see in Infinity War. Wakabi and, Shuri is now one of my favorite characters in the MCU. How good was Claw? And Michael B. Jordan, of course, as Killmonger. And, of course, Chadwick Boseman leading the way with a great performance. When it comes down to, if I had to choose, and I could only go see one movie tonight, and it was either Black Panther or Quiet Place, I'm going to tear my skin off trying to make that decision, but I think probably at the end of the day, I'm probably going to slip into the theater that's got Black Panther playing. So that's my number 1, which of course means Quiet Place is my number 2. Brilliant, low budget, simple movie. With some great CGI, which this whole movie could have been done for $1 million or less. Take out the CGI monsters, you're probably looking at $1 million or less of a budget on this movie. So I don't know how much they spent on the CGI. The CGI looked great, but Quiet Place, for most of you guys haven't seen The Hollers, which was John Krasinski's directorial debut for a feature film. But A Quiet Place is going to be most of your guys' first experience with a John Krasinski directed film. What an amazing job he does. The real brilliant thing about A Quiet Place, considering there's very little dialogue in the film, it's all directing and performance. When you've got so little dialogue in there, and you've got these performers on screen and this director coordinating everything that's going on, that's got to sell you on it, and it's done so well. And of course, my review for all of these movies that I've just talked about is on my YouTube channel. You can do a quick search for them and find them there, but you cannot go wrong with any of these films. These are 4 great films given to us in the first quarter. So again, the way I order the top 4 best films in the first quarter of 2018 is number 4, Ready Player One, Spielberg's back, baby. Number 3, Paddington 2. Number 2, A Quiet Place. And really my number 1 film of 2018 so far is Black Panther. So anyway, there you have it. That is my list. I'm sure your list will probably look a little bit different than mine. You might even bump out one of these films to replace it with another film. Like I said, I know a lot of people really liked Annihilation. I wish I liked it more, but whatever. Let me know what your list looks like. To you, what are the best theater the theater has offered us in 2018 so far? Let me know in the comments section below. Okay, with all that out of the way, we're going to get over to some live questions. And by the way, guys, before we get to the live questions, I'm going to let you know, the rest of the month, there's going to be some disruption this month, but that I'm really excited about, to the programming here on the John Campea YouTube channel. First of all, in the last week of April, I've got to spend a number of days in Vegas. I have to spend a number of days in Vegas because I'm going to the annual CinemaCon convention. And I'm going to be able to give you guys some great coverage because at CinemaCon, all the studios go and give this hour-and-a-half long preview. Each studio does an hour-and-a-half long preview of all their upcoming films for the following year, right? And they show us footage and they show us all this kind of stuff and they talk about them. I'm going to be able to give you guys in-depth reports about all the movies coming up and coming out, what we're going to be looking forward to, all that kind of stuff. I'm so excited about it. Plus, they do some special secret advanced screenings of a lot of films. So I'm going to be able to tell you guys about that. I'm very excited about it. So it means I'm not going to be able to be in my studio as I'm doing it. I'm going to be in some crampy little hotel room doing it, but I'm just going to make you guys aware of that. Also, later this month, I mentioned this on Open Mic the other day, but Ann and I applied to rent this other place that's right up. It's still in our neighborhood. It's up the street, but it has a lot more space, and we got it. So Ann and I are going to be moving near the end of the month. So there might be a day as we move the studio from here over there. We might have a day, maybe 1 or 2 days at most, where we won't have any new programming on the John Campea channel because we're going to be moving studios over there. So, but we'll keep that window short. Hopefully it'll just be one day that we don't have any new shows. But again, that's not till the end of April. Just want to let you guys aware of that. Okay, with all that stuff out of the way, let's jump into the live questions. And the first live question comes us from Starman, who writes, I dreamt I saw Solo. Wasn't good. Foreshadowing? I don't think so. I mean, hey, Solo might suck. I mean, it could suck. Look, it's a Star Wars movie, so I'm going to put all my faith in it for sure. But the reality is, there's been a lot of drama surrounding this movie. Hey, it's great that Ron Howard's there, but the circumstances under which Ron Howard ended up there were brutal and could have killed a lot of other movies. So, look, I'm not sticking my head in the sand here. I'm believing the best for Solo. I'm hearing good things about Solo, but I'm not sticking my head in the sand. There is a solid possibility this movie could be terrible. Could be. There's a lot of drama surrounding it. I'm believing the best. Again, like I said, I'm hearing good things, but we gotta be realistic. However, I don't think your dream is probably any foreshadowing, so I wouldn't worry about that at all. All right, let's move on to the next one. Pedro Garcia writes, in 2003, how was the hype for Freddy vs. Jason? I was only 7 when I saw it in theaters. There's video where Michael Buffer did a weigh-in for them. Yeah, they did some very creative marketing for Freddy vs. Jason. But you know what? I don't think I remember there being all that much hype for it. Now, hold on, let me look at versus Jason box office. I mean, I don't think it was a total flop, but it didn't do great. Yeah, I mean, worldwide, Freddy vs. Jason made $114 million. Now, that's not a flop because it only cost like about $30 million to make it, so it at least broke even. I would think it broke even. But it was by no means a hit. It was by no means a hit. Its opening weekend made $36 million, so, I mean, clearly there wasn't a lot of hype going into it. I think they thought there was going to be more hype than there was. That was another movie that probably should have happened 6, 7, 8 years earlier than it did. But yeah, there just really wasn't. They tried to hype it. They did I remember them doing some very creative things marketing-wise for it, but it just did not have the appeal that a lot of people was convinced it would have the appeal for. So that's kind of the reality of it. All right, let's move on to the next one. And the next one comes to us from Adam Griffin, and Adam writes, Sergeant Stubby, An American Hero, an animated film that opens wide next weekend. Approximately $25 million budget. What in the world is this, and how bad will it bomb? I'll be honest with you. I only even heard about Sergeant Stubby, An American Hero, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, just when I was looking at the release schedule. And I saw that, I'm like, what the hell is that? And I hadn't even heard of the film before then. I know it's got Helena Bonham Carter is one of the voices, and Percy Jackson himself, Logan Lerman, is doing one of the voices, and that's about it. I haven't seen a single commercial. I haven't seen a single trailer. I haven't seen a single piece of marketing for this film whatsoever, at all. It's going to flop pretty hard. It's going to flop pretty hard, Adam. I mean, I hate, like, and it's going wide. How do you put out a wide release film with no marketing? How do you put a film like this in wide release and not give it any marketing support? None. And I don't know, maybe there is marketing support out there and I've just missed it, but I have not seen a single shred of marketing to support this film. So if nobody even knows this movie's coming, who's buying tickets for it? So yeah, Adam, I agree. I think they are poised to flop pretty hard. So we're just going to have to wait and see. Rex Cousins writes, The Accountant is the most rented movie in 2017. That's awesome because I love the movie. Any news on a sequel? Well, yeah, it was really weird. We talked about this on the John Campea Show the other day. That oddly, the final report for rented Blu-rays and digital and purchased Blu-ray and digital, the reports of those came out. And you would have thought that like Rogue One and Wonder Woman would have topped those charts, but they didn't. Moana topped the purchase charts both on Blu-ray and on digital. So for people who are buying movies, more people bought Moana on Blu-ray and DVD and bought Moana on digital streaming than any other film. And that includes Rogue One, that includes Wonder Woman. On the rented charts, this was the big surprise. On the rented charts, it wasn't Wonder Woman, it wasn't Rogue One, it wasn't Moana. It was Ben Affleck's The Accountant. The Accountant was the #1 rented film on Blu-ray and DVD, and it was the #1 rented film on digital streaming. And let me look up here. What did it do it didn't do great at the box office. It made $155 million worldwide. 86 million domestically isn't bad. But total made $155 million. It had a modest budget, $44 million bucks. John Bernthal, of course, was in it as well. And I really like this movie. I really like The Accountant, like a lot. I was really disheartened when I saw that it wasn't doing as well at the box office as it deserved. It only opened at $24 million bucks. And I thought that was a movie that deserved a hell of a lot more. I enjoyed it thoroughly. But I guess the word of mouth got out about it, and a lot of people rented it. Nobody wanted to buy it, but people wanted to check it out, and a lot of people rented it, which is great. Word on a sequel. Well, we actually talked about 6 months ago on my show about how Warner Brothers and Ben Affleck had started talking about doing an Accountant 2. And I think their thoughts here are, well, you know what? The first one didn't do great, but the word of mouth was good. And the word of mouth was solid. Enough so that we see a lot of people rented it. They didn't make a ton of money from the rentals, but a lot of people rented it. So they believe they have a basis for belief here that a second one, that an Accountant 2, could do better than the first one. And we talked about that a lot. Like, even if a movie doesn't do well financially, at least if the audience that did see it talked about it, you could have some justification for doing a sequel. That is the case here with The Accountant. Didn't do gangbusters business, but a lot of people clearly liked it. So here's hoping, fingers crossed. I haven't heard anything definitive about them doing it, but from what I remember, the original director would be back to direct, Affleck would be back, and John Bernthal would be back. I did not hear about oh my goodness. Why am I forgetting the name of the girl? I love the girl. Yeah. Anna. Why am I forgetting her name? Now I got to look it up. Sorry, guys. Why am I freezing on... I almost said Anna Paquin, but it's clearly not Anna Paquin. It is... and I like her a lot, so I don't know. Anna Kendrick. Why was I like Anna Kendrick. Why did I freeze on her name? Anyway, from what I understand, Ben Affleck and John Bernthal would be back, but from what I understood, Anna Paquin wouldn't be. But that may have changed. That was a number of months ago that I heard that stuff. There might have been a load of updates since then that I'm just not thinking of right now. All right, let's move on here. Next one comes to us from Max Shabazz, who writes, your thoughts about the Conor McGregor stuff? Well, I've been talking about the Conor McGregor stuff the last couple of days. I'll just sum it up again. What he did was beyond lowlife. And you guys know I am a big Conor McGregor fan. I've been cheering for Conor McGregor. I love watching Conor McGregor fight. I love his trash talk. I love all that stuff. But what he did was inexcusable. And honestly, I never want him to be able to step foot in a UFC cage again. I want his career to be done. And I hope he gets sued. All that money he made on the Floyd Mayweather fight, I hope he gets sued for all of it. I hope everybody on those buses, everybody that he put in danger, all those couple of guys that he hospitalized because of throwing like garbage through a bus window and the glass cutting up people's faces. I hope all those people sue the hell out of him and that he loses all of that money and is never allowed to fight again. There's no excuse for that. It's not like he got mad and said some mean words. It's not like he even threw a punch at somebody. He brought 20 goons down to a place, threw large metal objects through bus windows that could have killed somebody. There's no excuse for that. And I don't care how big of a fan I was of his. I'm done with Conor McGregor. I never want him to be allowed to fight again. This is inexcusable. And I hope he's done. So we'll just see how that all turns out. Asian movie enthusiast writes, saw Noises Off, your recommendation, great film. Noises Off is one of the greatest comedies of all time. To me, my two favorite comedies of all time are 40-Year-Old Virgin and Noises Off. And depending on the day you ask me, they switch places between number one and number two. Noises Off is one of the greatest comedies ever. I love that movie. And you're talking about not an all-star cast. You're talking a Hall of Fame cast. Because you got Michael Caine, you got Christopher Reeve, you've got John Ritter, you've got Carol Burnett. The list goes on and on. It is a marvelous cast. And it's so funny. And I know so many of you guys haven't seen it yet. Thank you, Asian movie enthusiasts, for checking it out and bringing it up. If you guys haven't seen it yet, make sure you check out Noises Off. It's totally worth it. I love that movie. Alpha Adu writes, Spidey was CG'd out of airport lineup in the Civil War trailer. I think there was for a moment there, but then he was included. But then he was put in. So it's not as if they kept Spider-Man's presence in the movie secret up until the movie came out. They did plenty of marketing with Spider-Man in there and showed him in the airport scene as well. I think I remember you being correct. One of the early trailers CG'd him out, but that changed. And then I saw marketing with him in it. So it's not really an apples to apples kind of comparison. MuseTac Reviews writes, I smashed my head against a wall and set my alarm for this moment so I could apologize for idiotically spoiling Gotham. I'm sorry, John, F my life. Well, look, here's the thing. So those of you who don't know what happened, MuseTac got excited, wrote in a question in the live stream here that spoiled what happened in Gotham. Now, what I said, MuseTac, right away, is look, I understand you didn't mean to do it. I understand you were just being enthusiastic. I understand you weren't trying to spoil things for anybody. I know there was no ill intention. And look, we all slip. I have slipped doing live shows. I have slipped spoilers out. All of you in conversations with people have accidentally slipped spoilers. It happens. I get it. It happens. So I was very disappointed to hear the spoiler. I'm sure a lot of people were disappointed to hear the spoiler. And what I said was guys, remember, this isn't just a slip. You're actually typing it out. Read over what you type in before you hit that send button. Just do a quick evaluation, because unlike live conversations where once something comes out of your mouth, it's oh, you can't take it back. But when you're typing in a question, particularly something that might be spoilery, take a moment, read it over for a second, then hit the send button. Because it happens to all of us. We will all accidentally slip something out. So no sweat, Muztak. I know there was no ill intention. I know you didn't mean to spoil it for anybody. I know that you weren't trying to troll people. I understand that. So no sweat, water under the bridge, man. Just once again, for yourself, but for all of us, especially if you're just typing a question, take a moment, reread what you wrote, and then hit send, because it happens to the best of us. Stuff will slip out, and it's a lot easier to catch it when you're actually typing. Okay, Thunder Knight 19 writes, when watching a new TV show, how many episodes would you watch before deciding to keep going with it, or just to check out? I would give it about 3. It all depends. Like, if you watch the first episode and you hate it, why? You don't owe the TV show anything. You don't owe that TV show or that network anything. You don't owe it to them to keep watching. If you totally hate the first episode, check out. There's no point. Because here's the thing about TV. In 3 or 4 months, if you hear that it gets great, you can go back to it if you want. Right? But if you keep watching a show you already know you don't like, you're just wasting time in your life that you're never going to get back. So ditch it. And then later, if you hear it's really good, then later on you can decide to go back and check it out again. Like I did that with season 1 of Legion. I hated the first episode. So I checked out immediately. And guess what? I didn't miss out on anything, because a few months later, because a lot of people kept telling me it gets really good, I went back to it and I enjoyed it, but I didn't miss out on anything. So there have been shows that I've watched the first episode and got, okay, I'm out, and just clicked out of it. But for me, if I'm watching a first episode of something, I'm like, oh, that wasn't great, I'll give another episode. Like Legends of Tomorrow is a great example of that. I don't think I've loved any episode of Legend of Tomorrow. Maybe there's 1 or 2 I really liked, but it's always just been good enough that I'll come back again next week. You know what I mean? So, hey man, I'd say if you hate your first episode of a show, don't waste your time. Come back to it later if you hear it's good, but initially don't waste your time. Let's see. Rick Keir writes, hey John, hope you're having a good, and I am having a good, and also hope you get that house. Are we getting that Real Steel 2, or is it dead? Yeah, man, that Hugh Jackman film, Real Steel, was one of the biggest surprise movies to me ever. Because it's Rock'em Sock'em Robots. It looks so dumb. What a dumb idea for a movie, that Real Steel. And we loved it. We loved it. And that finale happens, the finale in the movie happens, and all I could think about is, oh my God, when are they doing the sequel to this? You know, when is Real Steel 2 coming? Because this Real Steel movie is awesome. Hugh Jackman was great in it. That kid was great in it. I mean, the movie made $300 million. I don't know how much they spent on it, but it made $300 million. So it's not like it was a total disaster. Now, if they spent $175 million making it, it was probably a disaster. But I really doubt they spent that much money. You had Sugar Ray Leonard doing the fight choreography for them, which is amazing. And it's great. It's like a Rocky movie, like it's heart pounding when the action is going on, but it's a really great story too, between a man and a boy and it's a really good movie. And I've never heard anything about a sequel. Let me just actually look up here. Steel 2. Let me look up Real Steel 2 here. The last thing that came out was, and I remember this, like in 2016, the director of Real Steel, Sean Levy, who I believe is like the executive producer of Stranger Things now. Levy talked about some ideas he had for Real Steel 2, but nothing else ever came out of that. Nothing else ever came out of it. And it's really a shame. I would love to see a Real Steel 2, man. I would be so on board for that. It's crazy. All right. Moose Tack Reviews writes, hope you still enjoyed the episode. I didn't love it. I'm talking about the Gotham episode that we were talking. I didn't love it, to be honest with you. I didn't love it. I'm not loving the direction that Gotham is going in, to be honest with you. There's some things they're doing there really well. And when they focus on those things, I love it. And then when they focus on these other things, I'm not big. And this whole thing that they're doing with Jerome, I've never been big on it. I mean, I think there was a moment that I was into it, but for the most part, I'm kind of grown fatigued of it. But anyway, that's just me. Angel Felisanio just sends in a super chat. Thank you so much, Angel. Alpha Adu writes, in Ragnarok's trailer, when Thor fights on the bridge, he has 2 eyes, but in the movie, he has 1. That was to avoid spoiling Ragnarok, not Infinity War. Check it out. Okay, but even if that's the case, that's a totally different situation. Because if you show Thor with 1 eye already gouged out, that in and of itself is a major significant key spoiler. To a major, not just event in that movie, but to a major event in the MCU. Like Thor getting his eye gouged out, Thor losing his eye, that's a major, major thing. Showing the gauntlet, this all comes back to that thing. Do you think they CGI'd out some stones in Gauntlet? I don't think so. It's possible. I've always said it's possible. And I'm not going to fall out of my seat with surprise if we found out that's the case. However, I just don't see the point of it. Show it with all the stones. That doesn't mean anything. Show it with none of the stones. That doesn't mean anything either. Show it, just CG off the glove. Like my whole thing about that whole thing with the stones in the gauntlet at that point is why bother CGI it out? Because if you see all the stones in it, or you see none of them in it, or whatever, you have no idea what the context is, and it doesn't really tell us anything. And why not CG? If they were CGing out stones, why did they just CGI out a couple of them? Why not just have it so there's just 1 stone? Why not just have it so there's no stones? Why not just, as I've been arguing this whole time, just get rid of the whole discussion and just have Thanos' bare hand punching? Why not just do that? That would be a lot easier. So I do not believe in this theory going out there that they CGI'd out some of the stones. I don't buy the theory. It's a totally. I also like. I see where you're going at, Alpha, and you're trying to pull back and get a broader perspective, and that's exactly what you should do. But I believe you're comparing apples to spaceships when you're trying to compare, like the gouging out of Thor's eye with something trivial that doesn't mean anything outside of context with how many stones are in the glove. There's only 1% of the movie-going audience that would even care about that. Like, remember, 99% of the audience that's going into this know nothing about the Infinity Glove, the Infinity Gauntlet. They know nothing about the Infinity Stones. They know nothing about the comic book history of it. That's 99% of the audience. 100% of the audience knew that Thor had 2 eyes. And then suddenly seeing him in a fight with one of his eyes gouged out, that's a major, major, major spoiler. Showing a glove with some stones in it is not a spoiler. If that's the case, why bother? You know the one shot in the Infinity War trailer where you see him with 1 stone and dropping the stone in. That's a bigger spoiler than showing the glove with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stones in it. Like, why show, if they were so concerned about hiding the fact of how many stones you have, why show us that in the trailer of him taking one of the Infinity Stones and dropping it in the glove? Why show us that? So I'm against it. Again, I'm not going to fall out of my seat with shock and surprise if they show it and all the gems are in there. Then that's what they do. I totally think it's a plausible theory. I just don't think that's what they're doing because it doesn't seem consistent, doesn't seem to make sense. And there's no need to do it. That's the biggest thing to me is that there's no need to do it. So anyway, that's just my thought. Sebastian Lerda writes, hey John, biggest TV phenomena of all time. Game of Thrones, Rome, Lost, Sopranos, Saturday Night Live, Seinfeld. I don't know. There's too many variables in there. Probably the biggest single television phenomena of all time was Who Shot JR for the TV show Dallas. That was probably the single biggest thing ever. Because, and I don't know what the ratings numbers were, all I remember is that me as a little kid who never watched Dallas, everybody knew who shot JR. Nobody knew the answer, but everybody knew the who shot JR. That was the biggest, like nothing has shaken pop culture, media-wise, like that element of that, and that one incident of TV. I can't think of a single thing that comes anywhere close to who shot JR. Like, there's a lot of people my age and younger who were like either little kids when it happened, like me, or weren't even born when it happened, and you've all heard of Who Shot JR. I mean, that was just it. That was it. Now, overall as a show, Game of Thrones is a huge phenomena, absolutely. Walking Dead's a huge phenomena. Rome wasn't that huge. Sopranos is huge. Like all these other things you're mentioning, Sebastian, really, really big. But as far as like one single incident, biggest phenom ever coming out of television that got the entire world buzzing was who shot JR. I mean, that was it to me. That's the very first thing that pops in my head when I think about it. So you've given some great examples for sure. But yeah, I think it's the who shot JR thing. Sharan Aurora writes, Ready Player One made $143 million in China in its first week. Yeah, it did really well in China. I mean, it doesn't mean it did all that great worldwide. It's still only hovering around 300 million. That's not enough to break even. And we'll just kind of see what kind of legs it has after that. But yeah, but those are encouraging. I mean, it's encouraging to see it do that well in China for sure. All Productions writes, The Hobbit came out okay, even with rushed production. Here's the thing about The Hobbit. The Hobbit had plenty of time to shoot. And it was their own fault. Both Peter Jackson, Guillermo del Toro's, Warner Brothers in general, blah, blah. It was their own fault for the delays and the delays and the delays. And it got delayed so much and so much and so much and so much and so much. And then they were simply running out of time. It's their own fault. They had plenty of time to do The Hobbit. And I agree with you. I think The Hobbit turned out okay. Nowhere near as good as Lord of the Rings. Nowhere near as good as that. And it certainly had its issues. And I particularly had some pacing and issues with the third part, with Hobbit 3. But I think The Hobbit turned out okay. I still think they're enjoyable movies. I can sit down and watch the Hobbit films, for sure. But just nowhere near as good as Lord of the Rings ones. I think most of us would probably agree with that. Michael Croissant writes, I teach English literature and mostly believe the book is better than the movie, Jurassic Park, for example. My only exception is Lord of the Rings trilogy, perfect movies. Well, I mean, see, that's the difference. I always get into these arguments with people when it comes about the book is better. No, the book is different. It's a different medium because the book can be anything you want to imagine it is. Like you're reading the page, but ultimately it's your own imagination that is forming the pictures in your head. So I disagree. The problem is this. Whenever I have very, very rarely in my life talked to somebody who saw a movie first and then read the book and thought the book was better. Very rare. For my experiences, and again, I'm only speaking for my experiences. I'm not speaking for your experience. From my experience has been 99.9999% of the time, whenever I talk to somebody whoever utters the phrase, the book was better than the movie, and I ask them the question, which did you consume first, the book or the movie? They almost always, the book first. Well, there you go. If you read the book first, then that becomes whatever pictures you put together in your head, the way you imagined it looking, the way you imagined it unfolding, the way you imagined the voices sounding, the way you imagined all this, blah, 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 blah. That became your template. Now everything's going to be compared to that, and whatever comes next isn't going to live up to it. And quite often, when I talk to people who saw the movie first and then read the book, go, oh yeah, the movie was better. So that's just kind of my thing about that. Again, I'm not putting excuses in other people's mouths. Everybody has their own reasons. I'm just saying, from my own experience, almost every single time, without exception, when I've heard somebody say the book was better, I ask, which did you experience first? Did you experience the book first or the movie? Almost always it's the book first. And quite often when I talk to people who say they like the movie better than the book, almost always they experience the movie first. So it almost like becomes whichever you consume first is going to be what you think is the better one. But it's an interesting discussion to have, but far more in depth than what we have time to do here. Let's see. Dim-Sum05 writes, new TV spot for Infinity War drop. I couldn't help myself. Oh, I didn't see it. So I'm going to have to check it out. I can't help myself either. I mean, I can say all I want that I've seen enough. I don't need to see any more trailers, blah, blah, blah. And all that's true. But if there's a new one, click. I mean, I can't help myself. I got to watch it. So I'm like you, man. KW Garrett writes, have you read Molly Ringwald's recent New York article about Breakfast Club and 16 Candles? She explores if the film's depiction of race and sexism hold up. I did not, no, but that sounds fascinating. That's especially from her perspective. That sounds fascinating. Thank you for putting that on my radar, KW. Because no, I haven't even heard of that article, but now I'm going to run and go look for it for sure. Let's see. Sebastian Lerda writes, Did you watch True Detective? Love both seasons. The second one was great as well. Spite the critics. News of a third season. Yeah, well, there has been talk of a third season recently. Like some new director has just come on for a third season, if I'm remembering correctly. So they're doing a third season. I did not like season 1 of True Detective, the first couple of episodes. To be quite honest, I thought the show was really pretentious, the first couple episodes. And then I got into it. And then I was in love with it by the time the final episode played. Season 2, did not like nearly as well. But I thought the performances were stellar. I thought Taylor Kitsch was great. I thought Colin Farrell was great. I thought, why am I freezing on his name? The guy from Dodgeball, for heaven's sakes. I've had him in my office a couple of times. Sorry, I don't know why I'm forgetting the dude's name. He's only like one of the biggest, Vince Vaughn. I am brain freezing a lot today. I thought Vince Vaughn was great in it. I thought the good Canadian girl, and again, I'm freezing on her name. Let's see here. Rachel McAdams. I'm freezing on everybody's. Maybe I'm tired. It's Saturday morning. But Rachel McAdams was great in it. I thought the whole cast was really great. I just didn't find the overall story and the progression of it quite as good. So I was with most other critics about it, thinking, I didn't like it nearly as much, but I did think the performances were really good. And again, as far as a third season go, I've just heard that recently that they brought on a new director. All right. Holy Jaibas writes, "Hey John, I was surprised to find out you went to seminary. I'm an education department pastor myself at church. Your show is my favorite YouTube show." Yeah, a lot of people, I don't know why people are surprised to find out I went to Bible college. Like, go figure. Yeah, I went to Bible college. I went to seminary. I worked in churches. I worked with youth of stuff like that. That's why it confuses a lot of people when people ask me about like religious beliefs and things like that. It's like I am a theist. I am still a theist. I don't really, I wouldn't call myself an evangelical Christian or anything like that at this point. But, yep, a lot of people find that very odd when they find that. I totally get it. But yeah, man, I was an armchair theologian. I love theology, all that kind of stuff. Okay, where was I here? Anthony R. writes, will Solo finally be the first live-action Star Wars to not have a lightsaber and any mention of the Force? We shall see. Well, I gotta believe the Force will probably, I wouldn't doubt it at all if the Force is mentioned. Or even history of the Jedi or stuff like that. I wouldn't doubt if that has a mention, but I do believe we will not see a lightsaber. I believe we will not see a lightsaber, and I'm totally good with that. I'm totally fine with that. Because really the only way we would see a lightsaber is if Vader showed up again. And how many times can you go back to that well? They did it with Rogue One, and it was amazing. I don't see any need to do it in Solo, a Star Wars story. This is going to be a smuggler, scoundrel character movie. At least that's what I hope. So yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we hear references to the Force or the Jedi or things like that. But I do believe with you, Anthony, that we're not going to see any lightsabers. I believe the lightsabers will not make an appearance. All right. Cameron Peterson writes, sound editing Oscar nomination for A Quiet Place, far too early. Far too early to say. The sound editing was good. I don't know. I'm going to say no. I'm going to guess no. It didn't really stand out to me that much. I have to go back in and watch it again. Maybe I'll feel differently. But even then, far too early to really speculate about that. But all I'll say is that it didn't stand out to me enough that it even made me think about it. So I'm guessing no, but that's just a guess. Maybe I'll change my mind on that later. All right, next one. Anthony R. again. To the people who should drink soup in their corner, why do you think some despise sci-fi, fantasy, or comic book movies? Is it because they lack imagination, or they think they can only enjoy realistic genres? Well, here's the thing, Anthony. To be fair, a lot of people have genres they don't like. Like, a lot of people don't want to watch period pieces. And there is nothing less bad about people who just refuse, it's a movie about 17th century this? Nah, I'm not interested. Like, that's just as bad as somebody going, a comic book movie is superheroes? No, thank you. I mean, both are stupid. Like, movies are movies, and I think people should just open themselves up and just like get past whatever the genre is and just go in and see if it's an engaging movie. And hey, look, if you're somebody that doesn't like comic book movies and you don't want to go see the next one, fine. If you're somebody who doesn't like period pieces and you don't want to go see this movie that happens in the 14th century, fine. You're ultimately the one missing out. But again, it's, movies are meant to be enjoyed. And if you look at something and you don't think you're going to enjoy it for whatever reason, then fine. Where I take issue and where I get a little bit upset is not when somebody says, I don't want to watch that movie because it's this genre. Because, then that's that person. That's them doing what is best for them. Whatever. Where I take issue is when people try to trash talk or put down others for liking that thing that they don't. But we see that all the time. Right? We see that all the time. See, I don't mind people who don't like comic book movies and don't want to go see them. That's fine. That's up to you. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. Where I take issues goes, no, these idiots who go watch comic book movies. Okay, now we have an issue. If you want to go there, let's get into a war of words, and I guarantee I'll win. That's the thing that really bothers me. It's like, oh, you like period pieces? Well, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's where I take issue. Where I take issue is not whether you like or don't like something. Where I take issue is where you start wanting to put down other people who like things that you don't like. And, we see that a lot with trolls, with Star Wars The Last Jedi. Like, there are some people who don't like The Last Jedi, and that's great, that's fine. But then there is a small segment of those people who have to go beyond that and insult anybody else who does. Like, that's when you cross the line and you become a moron. Right? That's when you make yourself to be a moron. Like, only stupid people would like, Batman versus Superman. Only an idiot would like The Last Jedi. Like, once you start doing that, now you're fair game. That's where I take issue with that. So, anyway, that's just how I kind of feel about it, Anthony. Let's see. Hullid Love writes, saw A Quiet Place yesterday. Good flick. All I heard was people eating popcorn and folks talking somewhere, i.e. hallway or in a different movie. So tense. I mean, right, because there's so much of the movie is so quiet. That's the thing, because when I go into a movie theater, right, I gotta get me a bag of popcorn. I don't eat popcorn at home. I don't eat popcorn anywhere else. But when I walk into a movie theater, my mouth automatically starts watering. It's a Pavlovian response, right? I walk into a theater and I'm just thinking about going to a movie right now. My mouth started watering. I'm not kidding. It really just did. Anyway, I gotta have a bag of popcorn. And I remember we're watching A Quiet Place, and I'm so self-conscious that I felt like me chewing popcorn sounded like stereo speakers blaring me chewing popcorn because the movie's so quiet. So every other little sound in the theater becomes amplified because the movie itself is so quiet. And yeah, it really does heighten that. But the movie is so tense that all that kind of stuff just becomes white noise in the background. But you're right, everything else, every other sound in the theater gets amplified times 10 because of how quiet the movie is. And I was like so self-conscious trying to eat my popcorn. It was crazy. You know what I was even doing? I'm not kidding. I would put popcorn in my mouth and just suck on the popcorn so that the popcorn would dissolve between my tongue and the top of my mouth. So I just press against the top of my mouth and just suck on it so I wouldn't bite and crunch because I was so self-conscious. All right, next one. We just got time for 2 or 3 more here, guys. Next one. Aston Regis, the flip side, writes, was watching the first Iron Man again. So good. Loved Robert Downey Jr.'s chemistry with Terrence Howard. Feel he was a better fit than Don Cheadle, and people are forgetting Rhodey in the Marvel films since. Thoughts? Well, I mean, Terrence Howard was a great Rhodey. They decided to go in a different direction. I think the chemistry that Robert Downey Jr. and Don Cheadle have is a different chemistry than what Terrence Howard and Robert Downey Jr. had. And I know there's some bad blood there. I know Terrence Howard has gone on record expressing there's some bad blood. He harbors some hard feelings against Robert Downey Jr. Maybe he's justified in doing so. Maybe he's not. I don't know. But I think Don Cheadle, first of all, Don Cheadle's a great actor. Don Cheadle's a fantastic actor. And I think he's done a very good job as War Machine. But yeah, I mean, if I could go back in time and say, would I rather them just stuck with Terrence Howard? Yeah, probably. I probably would agree. But I also love the job Don Cheadle has done. But, normally 9 times out of 10, all other things being equal, I'd rather them keep things the way they start them. And if they started with Terrence Howard, I do kind of wish they were able to work out that deal and continue with Terrence Howard. But again, if they're going to replace somebody and they replace him with somebody as talented as Don Cheadle, and he's done great, then I'm totally happy with that too. But yeah, a lot of people forget that Don Cheadle wasn't the first War Machine. It was Terrence Howard. And a lot of people do forget that. All right, last question of the day. And then guys, don't worry about it. If your question doesn't get answered, if you sent in a live question that doesn't get answered, don't worry guys, it'll be on Monday's companion video. So just look for your answer on Monday's companion video. Oh, and by the way, guys, let me mention this right now. Later today at 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, that's 5 p.m. East Coast time, I'm going to do a live A Quiet Place spoiler review. So we're going to get together. I'll give my thoughts on it in all the details, but also you guys will be free to fire in your thoughts and questions as well. We're going to have a live open discussion, spoiler review discussion of A Quiet Place. That'll be at 2 o'clock today. So if you're free that time, make sure you come on back and join us. All right. Final question of the day before we wrap things up here. Luke Thompson writes, the Fantastic Beasts movies, are they still doing 3 more movies after the Grindelwald one this November? It all depends. I mean, they have plans to do them, but that doesn't mean they're going to do them. Like, if Fantastic Beasts and the Crimes of Grindelwald come out and it flops, then you're probably not going to see another one. Doesn't matter what their plans are, doesn't matter what post-credit scene they have in the movie, doesn't matter how much this new movie sets up the next one, doesn't matter. If this one flops, they're not going to do it. So all we can say is, and look, this one's not going to flop. It's going to do fine, so there will be more. But their plans are to do 3 more, or is it 4 more? Anyway, they have plans to do a bunch more. But the best laid plans of mice and men, right? Or as Mike Tyson used to say, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And if they get punched in the mouth with a huge flop, that'll change their plan. So we're just going to have to wait and see. All right, guys, that will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show here on Saturday. Once again, guys, don't forget, come back and join us for the spoiler review on A Quiet Place. And by the way, guys, let me mention this to you too. I gave you guys some homework. There's still some homework to do here. If you've seen A Quiet Place, your homework is make sure you grab the Stardust app that you can see right here. And the link for the Stardust app is in my description below. Look in the description of this video below for the Stardust app. And give me your review and reaction on the Stardust app to A Quiet Place. Because on Monday's show, I want to put together a collage, a montage, as to say, of your guys' reactions and thoughts to The Quiet Place. And it's real simple. Just get the app, hit record your reaction. Once you record your reaction, hit in the top corner there, hit the tag button and tag me at John Campea. Just tag me at John Campea, all one word. And that way I'm going to see your reaction as well. And maybe you'll see your reaction on the montage on Monday. All right, guys, that'll do it for me for now. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until my next video, bye-bye.